Welcome to Kashmir Debate. Today we will discuss the current situation in the Indian occupied Kashmir. Kashmir question, Kashmir issue, Kashmir problem, whatever you want to call it. This was born in 1947 as a result of the invasion by Indian and Pakistani armies in Kashmir. Since then, on both sides of the line that divides Kashmir, resistance against this occupation has been in existence in different forms and shapes. People on both sides of Kashmir waited that the promises India and Pakistan made in the World Forum of United Nations will at one point be fulfilled, and they will be given the choice to decide the future of this state, which is officially called Jammu and Kashmir state. However, the major political parties that were born out of a populist struggle before 1947, the Muslim Conference and National Conference, they both gradually compromised on the issue of independence and united Kashmir. It seemed initially that this division was permanent, and people, particularly the major political parties, has accepted the division as final solution of Kashmir. However, gradually, some resistance forces emerged on both sides of Kashmir. On the Indian side of Kashmir, the resistance was mainly expressed through the aspirations which were against Indian occupation and very close to associate with Pakistan. On the Pakistani side, the resistance forces and the resistance took the form of independent Kashmir. On both sides, these forces were crushed by the Indian and Pakistani state forces with the help of their locally installed governments. In 1960s, the resistance took the form of national liberation for the first time, led by Maqbool Butt when they formed National Liberation Front. National Liberation Front carried out some operations which highlighted this issue to the world. In 1971, when Indian Fokker Plan Ganga was hijacked, the Kashmir issue once again came to the limelight at international level. In 1976, when Maqbool Butt crossed over to the Indian side of Kashmir for the last time and he was arrested, Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front was born in Birmingham in 1977. Up till 1980s, this struggle continued on both sides of Kashmir, particularly on the Pakistani side of Kashmir, where National Student Federation and many other organizations when National Student Federation and many other organizations demanded complete independence of Kashmir. However, the resistance on the Indian side of Kashmir till then was not as vocal and as popular as it was on the Pakistani side of Kashmir. But in 1987, everything changed when Indian National Congress and Kashmir National Conference, in collaboration with the Indian forces, rigged the 1987 election, where it was assumed by some quarters that perhaps the newly formed alliance of anti-Indian occupation forces, Muslim United Front, will perhaps do well in the elections. As a result of those heavily rigged elections, the younger generation of Kashmiris in the Indian side of Kashmir, particularly in Kashmir Valley, came out to streets in thousands. And soon the gun was emerged in the sea of peoples protesting against election initially and then against the Indian occupation. Since then, over 600,000 Indian armed forces are stationed in Kashmir Valley. And over 100,000 people are dead, many more injured, and the billions of rupees economy was destroyed. This situation continues till this day. People, the resistance is, although became non-violent, but the protests and demonstrations are daily occurring in the Valley of Kashmir. Outside of Kashmir, the information about Kashmir sometimes appear in the international press and media. However, what is the situation on ground and how the life of people is being affected and how the generation that was born after this latest phase of movement, how their lives are developing and taking shape. These are the questions which are rarely discussed and highlighted at international level. Today, we have someone in our studio who was born after this movement was started and who is now grown up into a very enthusiastic, aspiring and reputed journalist who writes on the happenings in Kashmir Valley and who has recently produced a very well-researched book on the resistance and occupation in Kashmir. He is also running a very popular online magazine, Kashmir Wala. Fahd Shah, thank you very much for coming here today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I have mentioned your book,
Yeah.
which is of occupation and resistance, and which obviously carries a lot of essays and articles by different very reputed writers. We will talk about this to the end of the program. But initially, can you tell us about yourself, that what kind of childhood memories you have?
Well, I was born during the time when there were bombs and firings all over in Kashmir Valley. That time when the movement started and the militancy started in Kashmir. So slowly and slowly, as I grew up, so what I saw was that everywhere there were bunkers of these sandbag bunkers, and there were army camps. And that time it used to be border security forces of India. So like in our house where I live, it was just like after every 100 meter there was a bunker. In the lane we used to live, in just that lane which is around maybe 500 meter long, there were around 13 bunkers. So it was very surprising to see that there is something like this happening. But as I started knowing things, that what is going on, as I was like growing up and growing up, so I felt personally that it is normal, that this thing is normal, this is there, because
that is how the life is.
That is how the life is. That these bunkers are usual. It's not something unusual. It's not something what happened in 1947, because I didn't know about that. But slowly, as we started knowing from our elders and people started talking about it, and slowly I started knowing that there is something called Kashmir conflict, that in 1947 this thing has happened.
Okay, we will come to that, but you obviously went to school there when you were there. So what you used to think when you passed through these bunkers and going to school and what was life like in school, and how you perceived all that, and what kind of effects you had on you and your other you know pupils in the
Yeah.
class.
It was something like when we are living in a house, so a stranger comes over, so you feel something unusual in your house. So it was kind of that feeling that there is something going on which is not usual, which is not normal. And we used to go to school, and they were like, sometimes there used to be fighting on the street, so we had to run, and sometimes there was a protest. Or I remember that when we were in school, that time the young protesters used to come to school, and they used to say shut down the school because there has been somebody has been killed, or there is something going on in the middle of the day. So then we thought that this is normal, this is how we are going to live now,
You
this
ever
is our
asked your
reality.
teachers that
Yeah, we asked our teachers, and even we asked our parents that what is this going on. So they used to tell us that that's how we learned about the history, that's how we learned about the Kashmir conflict, that they used to tell us that what are the things that have, what are the events that have happened in past, and why is situation like this. And I remember our parents and elders telling us that it never used to be like this when we were of your age. So they used to tell us stories of their college time, of their school time, that how different it was from what we saw. And they used to say that you are seeing all this bloodshed, we have never seen this, because it was something different. That time that time also there was Indian occupation, but there was not that huge number of Indian army personnel on everywhere in Kashmir. Like as you said, that there are more than 600,000 Indian forces, and it was huge, and it was strange that. And I remember in childhood that suddenly somebody would knock at your door and they would come inside. The army would come inside with their guns on, with their boots on, and they used to search the whole house, which we, which we call crackdown. And they used to tell all the housemates to sit outside, and not us, because we were kids, we used to sit in the compound of the house, and the elder men used to go, and they used to assemble in a ground, in a school ground or in a mosque ground, and then the search would start, and you used to go like for hours because they had to find someone. So it was very strange, and it was something that was like breaching our privacy, and it used to make us angry about it, that there is something going on which shouldn't happen. And when we learned about the past, when we learned that how our parents have lived, or how our grandfathers have lived, so we started getting more angry that we are not able to see such kind of life. We are seeing a life which is very different, and which is somebody is occupying us, somebody is forcing us to do things, somebody is forcing us to come out of our house, somebody is forcing us to stop and talk to them, and they will ask you questions, you have to reply. I remember in school days, army used to stop and say, show us your ID card, and we used to show. And if the ID card was missing, they used to slap, like we were kids, so they used to slap us, or they used to abuse us, that where is your identity card, why are you moving like this, you don't know that you have to keep your identity card with you. And I remember that my mother telling me, keep your identity card with you, so that when you go out and return home, not late in the evening but early in the afternoon. So that was how life was. It was very different, and it was very difficult life, that whatever we have seen. So it was a strange kind of thing, it was not normal.
So what you used to think then, that why these army people are coming in the houses, and why they are treating you the way they treated you? So did you question that why?
Yeah, in like early childhood, I didn't used to question, because as I said, I felt that it is normal. But the moment I learned that there is something called Kashmir conflict, and this is not part of India, this is a conflict place dispute between India and Pakistan. So the moment I learned that, so then I started questioning more and more. Then I started asking my parents and asking other friends and elders also, that what happened. Like they used to have a conversation, and they used to talk about that something happened in this year. So then I used to ask them more, what happened, who was killed that time, what was that protest like in 1990 when the Mirwais was assassinated. So I have learned all that from my elders, that what happened that day, that how people were in the protest. It was a funeral procession, and they were fired, and more than 100 were killed. So they used to tell us how the situation was like. And with those all events like the Mirwais assassination, like the Gao Kadal massacre and other massacres which happened in where dozens of people were killed. So I learned that this has been going on since from late 80s, and then the young people picked up guns and then they started fighting with the Indian forces. So that's why we are being tortured and people have been they are killing people here. So that's how we learned about it. And then we started like newspaper was frequent, it was daily, and with time I started reading newspaper also, that what is happening in the situation, and it made me more curious. It made me more curious to know more, that whenever something used to happen in our neighborhood areas, I used to go there and I used to find what has happened, who has been killed, and what was the situation like. And our elders used to tell us how the militancy started, how it erupted, how the young boys used to be on the streets with the guns, and what they used to talk. And slowly I started learning about the different political parties, who was the first person who started the political
And
party.
before that, in schools, what you were taught, about who you are, or what was there any, teaching about, your identity or your country, or
Oh, not at all, not at all. In school, we used to have history books. It was all about the Mughal era in India and about the Indian history. It was never about Kashmir history. In school, we never got to, like in our curriculum, we never got to know about Kashmir history. That time, even we didn't even have the Kashmiri language in our school. We used to study Urdu and everything was in English. And the history was all about the Indian history. It was never about Kashmir history. Like people in Kashmir, the monarchy in Kashmir, how things happened in Kashmir in past, who occupied Kashmir, Afghans, Mughals, whosoever it was. There was nothing in our history books. That everything we have learned is because of that what elders told us, and then the other books which came up, and then the newspapers we used to read. The whole history we got to know is from the people. It's all about like the oral history. Somebody, your grandfather remembers incident, he used to tell us that this happened, this is how Sheikh Abdullah was on Palladium Stadium cinema, and there was Jawaharlal Nehru, and he said that I'm promising people of Kashmir that there will be plebiscite. That's my grandfather has told me. So it was never in the history book. It was never mentioned. Even in our books, in our curriculum, there was no mention of Kashmir conflict. It was always a part of India. So then we knew that this is wrong, that whatever we have studied in our schools about the history, it has nothing about our own history. So we all learned that with different oral history and the people and the elders and the newspapers and the other alternative stuff, books and all, not in school. And in school we used to have conversations, like teachers used to talk about it, like after the studies they used to say that this is the thing happened. Like whenever somebody was curious, he would ask or she would ask that what is it all about, why is this happening. So then they used to tell us that this is why it is happening, but not in the curriculum was all different.
So, if we go a bit more into the human rights situation, there were crackdowns, and what other form of there were bunkers,
Other forms
and
of
what other kind of abuses were there which you faced or observed or heard about?
the other forms were like somebody would get arrested, the forces will come and they'll come at home at night or any time of the day in 24 hours. Indian forces would come and they would take a person away, and they're like those people are around 8 to 10,000 people who are disappeared. They never returned home. That is one big human rights violation in Kashmir which has never been investigated even. So that is one form. And the other forms, like people they used to be arrested and they used to be taken in these torture centers like Papa 2 and other Red Tiger. These are some of the famous torture centers in Kashmir, where they used to torture them so badly that it is said that from a torture center Papa 2 nobody has returned alive. And the bodies used to be thrown out or disposed or whatever. So it was choking. It was like it was so choking. It was threatening and like scary that people would go out. I would go out and I will feel maybe I'll get arrested. I will return or not. I'll return home or not. I'll tell you this one interesting thing. When in 2005, around 2005, the cell phones came in Kashmir. So everybody was buying cell phones and cell phones. So most of the people bought cell phones also because they used to stay in touch with their family, that yes, I am safe, something would happen, the grenade will happen, the crackdown will happen, or the encounter will happen, they would call home, yes, I am safe. So it became a mean of safety also to talk to your family. Because it was such a situation that you will go out in the morning, you don't know whether you will come alive or not. It was very choking all the time.
So when you were growing up, what when you started reading newspapers, what sort of coverage was in newspapers? Were they covering freely, or were they told to cover certain things and censor others? What kind of press was there?
Like that time when I was in school, we used to have this one Indian newspaper, Times of India, and some local newspapers. The local newspapers were fine. They used to report like so much from ground, that this has happened, this has happened. That time it used to be like that. And in Indian newspaper there was only when something big would happen, that would become a news, but not something usual. It was not like so much that Indian newspapers would cover a whole page, or they will cover a full story. But in local newspapers there used to be a lot of coverage. But with time that also changed. Like now today we also see difference in then media changed and other things changed. But the media in Kashmir became more and more big. And it was not censored in that. I'll say that it was censored entirely, that nothing was reported. There was a lot of things reported in. And with time and slowly people from Kashmir, they started joining newspapers in India. When they came into the mainstream newspapers, then more and more stories started coming out from Kashmir, because then the people from the valley were writing about their own people. So more stories started coming out. So there are a lot of newspapers who covered Kashmir.
So when we say abuses by Indian Army and other forces, including Kashmiri police, what was the behavior of militants with people? Obviously the army came after them when they were searching for them. And because they pick up the gun and they were fighting. So how was their behavior? I mean,
with the local
over
people?
The years, yeah.
Militants
From your
were
experience.
militants were like, from my experience, whatever I have heard, militants were fine with people mostly. But then you see that different sections happened with the militants also. Then it came to a situation where you didn't know who is who. You didn't know who is who, because there were so many militant organizations and there were so many people involved in the whole thing, in the whole armed movement. So then there were several incidents where militants have killed so many people. They have killed people. But you don't know, but the militant statement would come that this guy was working with this, or he was an informer, or he was this. But we don't know, like I don't know somebody, he's my neighbor and I don't know whether he's an informer or not. So he was killed. But if you will look the whole story about the militants' relation with the civilians, it is much better, and it's much like this time in 2013, even in today, when the encounter between the militants and the Indian forces happened. So the people in the around the encounter site, living or in the area, they come out and they start throwing stones at Indian forces to disrupt them. So that shows us that how much support they get. And in the funeral processions, there are thousands of people joining funeral procession for one militant. So they have huge support within the local people in Kashmir.
And what kind of human rights organizations emerged? Are there any organizations which are kind of monitoring the human rights violation, and what is their kind of resources and infrastructure, and what kind of support they have?
There are a lot of human rights organizations and other rights organizations emerged in all these years from Kashmir, which are based in Kashmir also. Like this one organization which is about the disappeared people, APDP, Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons. It is one of the organizations which is working on the disappeared persons. They say that's around 8,000 to 10,000. So they have this infrastructure. They They have documented all these people whose fathers or mother or sister or wives, like the half widows we call them, whose husbands are disappeared. So they gather in a park, in every month they gather in a park, or they file reports that these are the persons who are kins are disappeared. So this is one organization which is working on the disappeared people. Then there is another organization formed, which is the Jammu and Kashmir Coalition of Civil Societies, and it's also the APDP's, it's a sister concern with them. So they have been working a lot on the human rights violations. They have done these two major reports, one which came in 2009 with buried evidence about the unmarked graves in Kashmir, which was like something new, which people knew that this is happening, but there was no documentation. But the moment that report came out, so there was something documented that there are these number of people buried in unmarked graves, in mass graves. So that should be investigated. That was not investigated in 2009. With time in 2012, they came up with another report, more reports. So total around 7,000 unmarked mass graves they have reported so far. And the people whose kids and kins are disappeared, they have been telling that there should be a DNA test of these graves so that we can find out whether there are some people who we think are disappeared, are buried in those graves. But the government of India said that we don't have enough resources to do that. The government of India said that, which is like funny, that they don't have resources to do DNA of 7,000 graves. So they said that these people should go to they should identify the grave, then we will check. So how can somebody identify a grave and he doesn't know that where is he when it's a disappeared person? So the government of India has been like, it's behaving deaf and dumb. They are not doing anything about it. They have never investigated those 7,000 graves. Even their state department, one of the state's department, SHRC, State Human Rights Commission, they acknowledge it that there are 38 graveyards and there are these number of mass graves in Kashmir. They acknowledge it, which is a state department. But still, the government didn't do anything. So it's still lingering that reports are coming out. So the human rights groups have been working. They have been making these. They have been documenting the reports. So they have their people in several areas, in far-flung areas. They go there and they do their field work. They prepare the reports. Then there was another report which came last year, was alleged perpetrators, in which more than 500 people from the Indian forces and the local police who were involved in torture and killings and extrajudicial killings, custodial killings, they were named in that report. But nothing happened with that. India didn't do anything.
No action taken.
No action were taken. There is nobody who has been prosecuted. There are so many fake encounters which have come out and which have been exposed, that these are the people involved in this, but nobody has been prosecuted.
There are obviously, from some estimates, over 100,000 people got killed, and most of them were either civilians or some maybe were militants. But the people who got killed and the families who lost their breadwinners, mostly men are killed. Obviously, there are some women killed as well, but majority is men. And the families which are affected as a result of that, and there are so many people who are disabled, and their livelihood is gone as well. So is there any support mechanism which supports this kind of families who have nobody to look after them or to earn their living?
No, there is no such mechanism that they will be given livelihood or like that. But they receive the legal aid they receive, or they receive help in their cases. They file the cases, and there's no such thing.
Who they receive help from?
They receive help from the independent groups, like the independent human rights groups or the legal aid groups. They receive help from even from some pro-freedom groups also. They have their own groups of lawyers and all, so they help them to file cases and all. But like I have seen in my time during my time of work in Kashmir as journalist, families always complain that we don't have enough resources to live. My husband has been killed, and I am doing this. I am doing labor work or something like that. My sons are doing this. I don't have money to teach my children. So such things have happened. There is no such grand mechanism for such families or for such people. that they can live. But there are some organizations, there are some organizations for orphans where orphan children are studying. Like it's estimated that around 30,000 orphans are there, and there are so many people who are injured. So they receive help, but to a certain limit. Not that the whole people who have been affected they are covered under it, and it's always from the independent groups.
Okay, and obviously you moved on then to study journalism.
Yeah, I moved on then to study journalism in Kashmir.
What sort of made you make the decision that I want to go to journalism? What attracted you?
Well, I was always, after my school, I was always interested in engineering, and my family was thinking that I should do engineering, and I was also like so fascinated about it, that engineering is something big and I should do it. So I was thinking about it all the time. So I even sat in the engineering examination, but I couldn't qualify engineering examination, and then I was again preparing for next year. But then suddenly my mind changed, because in Delhi, when I was in Delhi, so I became friends with some journalists and with some bloggers. So I felt that, and in Delhi, during these conversations and discussions, there were so many people who used to say things about Kashmir. So I felt that I think they don't know about Kashmir, because they were saying strange things. Oh, that this is happening. Everybody is carrying a gun. Everybody is a Pakistani. You should go to Pakistan, which is not the fact. So I felt that there is nothing. How can this happen, that we have such big media houses and they don't know things? They are behaving like these intolerant, arrogant people. So I had a friend, he said to me, why don't you write about it? Why don't you write about all this? Why don't you write a blog? So in 2009, I started a blog from Delhi, and I started writing these few things. But I was a very bad writer. So I started writing as much as I could. But then I felt that if I'm writing, then why shouldn't I go into writing field where I can tell stories more professionally? Then I went into journalism field and I studied journalism. And with studying journalism, I started working with the local newspapers, magazines, and all. And since then, I have been writing.
So when you went into India, and obviously you met some people who were sympathetic, but others who were who had different perception. What about the Indian civil society and the human rights groups? What kind of interest they have in Kashmir, and what they do about it? Do they do anything to support these people of Kashmir, or what is the general kind of perception there?
Well, there are a lot of organizations in Indian side. There are a lot of human rights organizations, civil rights organizations. There are a lot of activists, academics in India, and the number is growing now more and more, who are supporting Kashmir and who come to Kashmir, they research in Kashmir, they write about it, and they are more vocal about it in outside Kashmir also. So they come to Kashmir, they return. So then they are more vocal about it among their own people. They speak up. They speak up in conferences. They prepare reports. Like there are so many people, prominent people, who have been writing about Kashmir. So there is a major section of civil society in India also, and among people also, academics, students, writers, filmmakers, who believe that whatever is going on in Kashmir by India is wrong, that India is occupying Kashmir and they should leave Kashmir. So they are supporting Kashmir. But then there are a lot of others also who don't believe that. Well, you can't expect everybody to think same, that they should support us. It is only that some people will support you and some won't. So there are some organizations and some individuals who support Kashmir and they feel same about Kashmir and they fight about it, and they also face for that in their own, among their own people and in their own country.
So when we come back to the resistance movement in Kashmir, obviously there are different political parties, there are different groups, there are different ideologies. We'll discuss that in a bit. But how this resistance has changed over the years? Has it changed over the years?
Yes.
What sort of changes has this resistance been through?
the resistance, like in late 80s, it was politically, people were fighting politically, like you said, Maqbool Butt and others. That time they were fighting politically against India and Pakistan. But after late 80s, they people picked up guns, so then it was a full-fledged armored movement against an army. But with time, that armored movement also started, faced a slowdown, and it started fading. But it didn't end. It has faded, but it didn't end. Like, we can't say there are no militants in Kashmir right now. But with time, the younger generation started knowing about the things, and they learned about it, they learned about the conflict. So they also became more vocal about it. That's how the shift came in the movement. That's how it became turned to this alternative resistance ways. That's how it turned towards more about art, towards more about writing, towards about different things. That's what is used these days. In 2008 also, in 2010, you have seen that new things emerged from Kashmir. Like stone throwing was another is a part of it, the new resistance. Like the graffiti started coming up in Kashmir, it's a part of new resistance. There are people writing poetry, conflict poetry, young from people from in school, they write resistance poetry. There are resistance songs coming up from Kashmir. There are so many things coming up, and this has come to a shift, that from the older generation to the newer generation, when the resistance moved from the older generation to the new generation. So it also got a bit filtered and more sophisticated, and more you can say perfection came in it, or it changed its ways, because with time things change. You cannot have same thing which you used to have in 90s, you cannot have that in 2013. You have to find different ways to communicate with world, to inform world. You have to be in the media, you have to make movies, you have to make films. So there are people making documentaries. There are so many people I know of my age who are studying outside Kashmir as documentary filmmaking or photography, or learning music or writing. So they, of course, they come and they write about it, they make movies about it. So that's how the resistance has changed. In 2008, in 2010 were the major two mass protesters in which that came out, and the world saw that there is this new generation which is more angry, of course, because they have seen this since they were born, which is more angry. So, and they are doing things differently. But also there is a militancy going on right now also, and militancy has a support. And there are, you may have seen in the media reports that there are young people joining militancy. They are picking up guns today, leaving colleges. There was this one guy I know from he was killed in South Kashmir. He had done his engineering diploma from the school, and after 2 months he joined militants, and he was killed after 3 months.
What is making them do this? Because when the last time they picked up the gun, the people in late 80s, the result was huge army crackdowns. And then it also sort of became an open secret that where that gun came from. And are they desperate, or out of desperation?
No, it's not out of desperation. It's not out of desperation. It's out of what they have seen. Like you can have 5 different people. 5 different people you will put in through a certain process. They will see same thing, but 5 different people will respond differently. So you have these 5 different people responding differently. One is writing about it, another is making movies, another is singing songs, and another one is just talking about it, and someone else is picking up guns. He can find that the only way to fight. So it's what they have seen. It's what you will see. There are a lot of people who were killed in 2012 as militants. They were stone throwers in 2010. So there is this one guy, Hilal, who was killed he was from Patan Palhalan. There is a video speech of 2010 or 2008 protesters, in which he says that the only way to fight India is to pick up guns now. He was a stone thrower that time. In 2012 he was killed as a militant. So he had picked up gun after that. So it is the development of their mind that they respond that way. So there are different people responding in different way. So it is their way of response. And I believe the militancy in Kashmir is a self-defense, because it is what they have seen, and it is how people have been killed. So there is someone coming up and he says, okay, I'll fight against it with the same weapon as they use. Like in Shupian recently, 5 people were killed in the main town, and Shupian is under curfew for so many days now. So it is how, so that affects, so that may affect some people in Shupian who will pick up guns, who knows. So these things have developed, all the events, all the things, all the massacres happened, all the tortures and everything happened which Indian army did, or the local forces. So they have in a sense created these people and created militants and made ways for to the creation of militants. So it's not something that they'll do out of desperation, or a lot of people say it is romanticism. So it's not like that. It's just in a way they are responding with their own way. They are responding to the situation. So different people will respond to the situation differently. So it is their way. We cannot say they are wrong.
One of the impacts of this militancy or the this clash between Indian Army and the local Kashmiris had been the migration of people, large number of people, some to Jammu, mainly the Pandit community, and some to the Pakistani side of Kashmir. There are a lot of thousands of people came to this side as well. But obviously the migration of Pandit has been seen as a result to the politics of this movement. That this movement from very beginning initially asked for the kind of diverse society and a state where all people can live together, but then soon it became a very much Islamic movement, and the non-Muslim Pandits especially were put in a position where they had no option but to leave. How you see this? I mean, was it the case like this, or are there any other stories to this?
There are a lot of stories and a lot of versions about this. Personally, I feel it's a very sad thing which has happened, that somebody has to leave his homeland and they are living in an alien land. So it was a tragic thing which happened with the Kashmir movement. But you have to also see that you cannot have same people. Like of course we know that there were a lot of Pandits. There are some Pandits. There are new media reports that around 219 Pandits were killed in Kashmir by the militants or by the people, whosoever by the armed people. So they have been killed. So if somebody's brother or mother or father has been killed, so of course they will have this. They will have the. they will react to that in an angry way. They cannot say that okay, this is a good movement and this has benefited us, this has not benefited them. They have faced same. Like if somebody's father is killed in Kashmir by the Indian army and somebody's father from the Pandits is killed by a militant or somebody else, so you cannot measure the pain. The pain is same. You cannot say that this guy is more painful and that is less painful. So about the Pandit migration, there are a lot of stories that there are stories that the militants forced them to leave, which is also true. With some lot of families, there were people killed and they left. And with lot of people, it was fair also. Because I have been to Jammu, I have been to these quarters where the Pandits live even today, Jetty camp. So they say that most of them, whosoever I talk there, they blame the central government for it. They don't say that the people forced us to leave. Even in a lot of places, there were Muslim families telling them, don't leave, what will we do? And we will be killed here. And that is what happened. The moment Pandits left, it was complete like killing and the torture, arrest of the people in Kashmir. And still there were some Pandits who never left. Still there are around more than 600 Pandit families who are still living in the valley, and they never left, and they are proud about it. They say we never left. It is our land and it will be our land whatsoever it is. And why was it only about Pandits? Like we also have Sikhs there living there who support the Kashmir movement right today also. They come out to protest also. So they are also not Muslims. They are also they are Sikhs. So it's not only about that this movement became more about Islamization and all that, but certainly there were some groups in the among the militants also who want this to be an Islamic land, and they want it to be ruled as an Islamic state. They want to become as an Islamic state. But there were other groups also who didn't believe in that. So you have all these different sections among the militants also.
One I think distinguishing feature of Kashmiri society, particularly the Valley society, from history as well, has been this notion of Kashmiriyat. That yes, this is the place where people from different religions, people from different beliefs can live together, and they can practice their spirituality in places which were common for different people of different faiths. And I mean, what for your generation, how aware your generation is of that, and how real you think that was, or was this just romantic stories, which we were told who never been to Kashmir Valley? I mean, what is the reality of that?
Well, we have heard about that from our elders only, that how they used to live with Pandits and with other religions, and we have stories like our family used to have a lot of friends among Pandits also, and they say that we used to celebrate festivals together. When it was Eid, so Pandit friends would come in the Muslim house. When it was the Pandit festival, so they would go to their house, and it's famous that they would go there, they cook, there's a festival when they cook fish or something, so they would go to their house. So it was people were living amicably, they were living together with love and care. But then also there are bitter memories also with some people. Some people say no, they were not living like that. It was always about Muslims were against Pandits and Pandits were against Muslims. But there are some people who will say no, they were. So it is also about the personal stories. It's about the personal stories. Somebody has seen it personally, the bitter memories. So they will today speak about the bitter history. So people who have lived with affection and love, they speak about those things. They speak about those things. We still have Pandit friends, like my father and my family used to have, who used to live in nearby. We go to their houses in Jammu or in Delhi. They live, and I personally have so many Pandit friends, and there are also some Pandits who don't want to talk to you. So you cannot generalize the whole community and the whole section of people with just 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 persons that these people are wrong, or these people have these people are against us. Because there are also some people who are not against you. So you cannot generalize the whole. It is same about the Pandits, it's same about the Muslims.
Is Kashmiriyat still relevant to the people who are in the struggle, who are in the field, whether they are writers, whether they are political activists?
I think so, because you can see how Kashmiris are so accommodating, that how if somebody comes from India, Kashmiris are known for hospitality. How they accommodate other religions and how they accommodate people from other cultures. People from India come to Kashmir, they live with so finely, and then they go back to India, they speak about it, that we have so many friends in Kashmir. So there is nothing like that. But you cannot ignore that there will be some people always in a society who will not be like that, who will not accommodate you, who will not accommodate other people from other religion or people from other cultures. But it's not like that you will generalize the whole community with that there are people who don't accommodate other religions. It is always about one section of the society.
There are some incidents of attacks on shrines. For example, recently the Gir Sahib was destroyed, and there were also incidents of forcefully closing the liquor shops and throwing acids on some girls who were not wearing the hijab. I mean, is that a local trend or local change, in the by the local militants, or is these incidents were mainly from, those who were from outside, or they were called guest militants or whatever?
Well, we don't know that because nobody has seen somebody throwing acid. This is only about, and it's not right now. Nothing like that is happening right now. Like I have not seen like this, but it has happened in past that acids or something like that happened. And Dastagir Sarab shrine, it was not attacked. Like it was never proved that it was attacked or what happened with it. It just burned down. How the fire started, nobody knows. It is I think still under investigation. I don't know that it was attacked. And the other stuff, the girls are attacked or the liquor shops have been closed. Liquor shops have been saying that they should close them. It is a fact that there are groups saying that the liquor shops should be closed and liquor should be banned in Kashmir. And we don't know who says that. There are groups, there are militant groups who will say that. There are even pro-freedom groups also. There is Hurriyat saying that the liquor shops should be banned. And right now, just few days ago, there has been a bill has been tabled in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly about banning the liquor in Jammu and Kashmir. So it's also in the mainstream politics also that the bill has been tabled in the assembly.
So that particular issue about the liquor is a part of the mainstream politics.
It's also like I just read the news few days ago that the bill has been tabled in the assembly that the liquor shop should be banned.
Okay, so let's move on to the politics of the whole situation. Currently, there are obviously mainstream parties like PDP and National Conference and all that. But the parties which are the forces which are usually called pro-freedom or separatist, if you are looking from Indian point of view, and or pro-freedom if you are looking from people of Kashmir point of view. So, what kind of political groups are there? What kind of politics they are projecting? And how much linked they are with the younger generation?
The mainstream, as you said, the National Conference and the People's Democratic Party, they are the mainstream parties who mostly by the people and the younger generation, they are seen as the representatives of India. And then there are pro-freedom or pro-resistance or from the Indian version separatist groups, which are like so many, there are several. The three major ones are the Hurriyat M and Hurriyat G and the JKLF group by Yasin Malik. So they are connected to the youth, like youths respond to their calls. If somebody will give a strike call, they will respond, there is a strike. And if there is a protest call, they will come on roads and they will protest. So they are connected to the youth. But it's also about that a lot of people also feel that there is maybe mistrust with the people, with the leaders, or there is some youth or some people will say that this is not the way that the resistance should be. There has been debate, lots of debate on whether strike is a good way of resistance or not, because it at the end affects us. And there have been debates on the stone throwing also, whether it's a right way to protest or not. So, but in the general sentiment is that the resistance is good, whichever way you can do it, whether it's stone throwing, whether it is militancy, whether it is strike, everything is a part and it becomes the whole resistance. So you have to fight with every way possible, whether you write down on the walls, go India, go, whether you write down on the currency, whether you fight, whether you come on roads to strike, or whether you close down shops. All these things make up the movement of resistance. So that's how it is.
So what is the politics of it for these groups? Are they see this struggle as for the liberation of whole of the state, or they are just concerned about the Valley of Kashmir?
No, they always see this as a liberation of whole of state. But I think there are some groups who believe that the side which is on the Pakistan side is already independent. So there are some groups who want to be with Pakistan, they are pro-Pakistan. There are some groups still like the JKLF who want it to be the independent, and they say that it should be independent from this side and that side also. But the general demand and the general sentiment is that the people of Jammu and Kashmir should be given right to self-determination, and which means that the right to self-determination will be in the whole of Jammu and Kashmir, whether it is in Pakistan side with China or whether it's with Indian side. that is the general sentiment now, that they should be given the right to self-determination. So it's not only about Kashmir Valley, it's about the whole valley. Like in Kishtwar, when the incident happened on Eid, so there was a strike in Srinagar also. So people shut down shops in Srinagar. So it is always connected, and the general sentiment is about the right to self-determination.
Mm-hmm. But what about the Jammu and Ladakh? I mean, what has been done by the Kashmiri leadership to engage them in this struggle and to convince them that this is also for their freedom?
I think there are some leaders have tried to go to Jammu, and they have tried to, maybe they have their people in Jammu also, and in Ladakh also they have their contacts and they have their people. And in when things happen in Ladakh or in Kargil last year, there were some protesters due to the convergence. So the leaders responded to that, and they said that this should not be done, that there should not be things like that. And if something happens in Jammu, if something happens in Poonch, and then the people of Srinagar also respond. There will be a strike in the whole state, but then it depends on the people who will shut down shops or not. But people do respond to them, like local people also respond. And it's not only about that we are thinking about it, whether this struggle is about Jammu, Ladakh and Kashmir. The people also, general people also think about it. What is happening in Jammu, because now the world is so small, they are connected. You get everything on Facebook, on your cell phone, you know everything. What's happening in Jammu, what's happening in Poonch. Like this Mughal Road, people are so much excited about the Mughal Road that they think that they are coming more closer with this. So it is connected, but it also depends, like you will never know what is the leader's politics. Personally, you will never know that. It is always what they put out. So you never know what are they thinking between the groups.
It seems that at the moment, whatever goes on in the valley, the people in Jammu, they always generally what is coming out from there, and obviously you will perhaps know more than we can know from here, that they always blame the valley people, and they try to justify the army actions rather than opposing the army or showing support for the valley people. And similarly in Ladakh, there is no kind of support for what is happening in the valley. So in that situation, what are the chances that there can be some kind of movement that connect all these people?
Because I think personally that the majority of the people in Jammu, they want to be with India. Like it is, as you can see, that they are not affected when things happen in Kashmir. They will never close their shops, they will never come out on roads when people are killed in Kashmir or in Doda or in somewhere else or in Poonch. And it's same with Ladakh also. Leh never closes down when things happen wrong, and like right now during the Shupian incident there was strike in Kashmir. So Leh, there was no strike in Leh, there was no strike in Jammu. So it's also about, like in a way they have accepted the fact that the state has accession with India and the state is part of India. I have also met a lot of people from Ladakh who say that we are fine with India. And I ask them, why do you travel from? They say, we go to Ladakh, we go to India from Manali road, we don't go from this road because it's not that good, because we have to pass through the Kashmir Valley. And there will always be a certain section of people in Jammu, maybe they will be Muslims, in Ladakh also, they will relate themselves with the Kashmir Valley or the whole struggle. But I think that the majority of them have accepted, in a way, with time they have accepted that we have to be with India.
So what does Kashmiri mean for the people in the valley, for your generation?
For our generation, Kashmiri means somebody from Jammu and Kashmir, because we normally call Jammu and Kashmir Kashmir. It is it depends on the terminology. Like the name is Jammu and Kashmir, but whenever somebody calls that he is from Kashmir, whenever somebody tells me I'm from Kashmir, so I ask him, where are you from? Because I know that he can be from Doda also, he can be from somewhere else also. But it is now the terminology has become in a way that somebody from Ladakh will never say that I am from Kashmir. He will say I am from maybe J&K. J&K they say, or he'll say I am from Ladakh, because that's a region. Or Jammu people will say.
But the people in the valley generally, do they consider people outside of the valley in the state as Kashmiris as well?
Yeah, of course. It's not the Kashmiri, like they'll say they are Kashmiris. They're
not koshers.
Because they not think that, they think that the Kashmir is about the Kashmir Valley, but they consider them as the part of the state. But as I said, the part with the Pakistan, it is like automatically they think that it is Azad Kashmir. So from people like that, from people on that side, they'll say they are from Azad Kashmir. So I think most of the people believe that that is Azad Kashmir. Like, I can't talk about on behalf of everyone. Like, I personally believe that the people on that side, it is Pakistan administered Kashmir and generally called Azad Kashmir. And I think that the people in Poonch, Doda and Kishtwar, they are part of it. But of course, from Jammu, I'll say, okay, he's from Jammu, because Jammu is a division, it's a terminology. But then at the end, it is the whole state. You have to talk about the whole state. So yes, they do consider them part of the state.
On the Indian side, Kashmiris have representation in the Indian Parliament, and do they have representation in any other central or federal institutions?
Oh, the Indian Parliament, there are members from Jammu and Kashmir state, of course, and also in some bureaucracy and in some other things, in official works, there are people of Kashmir in different parts. It's like it's distributed like everywhere. Whenever there is a Kashmiri, he will be a part of it if there is a system. But there are from Kashmir in the government. I think there are some like as many as seats they are filled by people from the state in the parliament.
And if they were not represented, things would have been different.
In which way?
If they were not represented in the Indian Parliament, is that better or is it worse for the Kashmir conflict?
No, I don't think that's better. I don't think that's better in any way, because it's like just normal parliamentarians like from other states. It's not something to do with the Kashmir conflict, because the people who fight elections and they go to the parliament, they accept that state is a part of India. They will not believe in Kashmir conflict, of course. People who form mainstream government in the state, they accept the Indian state as the country.
No, but does it affect the disputed nature of the state? If they are represented in the Indian Parliament, does it affect the disputed nature of the state?
No, I don't think it affects the disputed nature, because it's always a dispute, and like it is dispute. But of course, India, even if there is representation or there is no representation, India will always say that this is not a Kashmir, this is not a dispute, which is why there are so many groups in Kashmir who are saying that India has to accept that Kashmir is a disputed place. But India doesn't accept Kashmir is a disputed place. India says Kashmir is an integral part, and like Pakistan says Jammu and Kashmir is a jugular vein. So both the countries have claimed one state. That country claims this is ours, this country claims this is ours, and the Kashmir is between the two places divided. So it doesn't affect it. That doesn't affect it or helps it.
So that is kind of a representation which does not represent the people.
Yeah, it represents people, like it represents they have to do, whether it's about development, whether it's about making offices, whether it's about employees, or whatever it is about that a parliamentarian has to do. They do that work, whatever they have to do. It has nothing to do with the conflict. Like with the local MLAs, also member of legislative assemblies, who votes them? People vote to them, and they come to power. That's how they come to power. So that people vote to them because they see it as something. They see MLA as an official, that he is an official. He'll come to this place and we'll go to him, and he is an authority, that he'll make road, he will get water, and he will get electricity, he will make this hospital, he will do this. So they see them like that. So it doesn't affect it doesn't affect the conflict nature, it doesn't affect the identity of that person, whether he relates with India or not. That is very far away. They vote them as their local member. It's like the government having a head officer or something in the constituency. It's like that.
So in the situation where the active demand for plebiscite is in just one part, that is Valley, and there is a support for that in Azad Kashmir, and among diaspora from Azad Kashmir as well, and there is no popular demand for that in Gilgit-Baltistan, and of course, like we agreed that there is not much support in Jammu and Ladakh. So what are the chances that there will be a plebiscite? I mean, the people who are fighting on the ground, obviously they are fighting for plebiscite, or the old people should be given a choice to decide about the future of the state. But in this situation where the demand is confined to only certain areas, what are the chances that this will happen?
I think the chances are not that much, but you cannot say that there are no chances, and because the plebiscite is something, it also depends on what do you call a plebiscite. Like there are groups in Kashmir who say that UN resolutions are the basis of this conflict and we should have a plebiscite as per the UN resolutions. But in UN resolutions you don't have Azadi, which is the popular sentiment in Kashmir, which is the popular slogan. There is nothing called independence in the UN resolution. It's only about whether you have to be with India or you have to be with Pakistan. So UN resolutions cannot be the base of the solution for that matter when you are speaking about independence. So the popular resistance in Kashmir Valley, whenever there are mass protests, people always say we want freedom. So freedom means independence from both the places, from India and Pakistan. So it has nothing to do with the UN resolutions. So you cannot use UN resolutions, you cannot use plebiscite. So you can say that we want to have a self-determination when there are three options, India, Pakistan and freedom. Or else you can fight on the basis of the independence only. You have to give up India, you have to give up Pakistan option, then you have to give up United Resolutions also. But that is not happening. So it is a bit like connected to each other, and it is also becoming, it's also difficult to explain what is going on. Whether when this group is saying that the United Resolutions are the basis of the conflict, then how can they say that we want independence? Because there is no independence in the United Resolutions. But the local people, but the people who are fighting, but the people who like the general people. Like the general people, they say that we want independence. So they mean that independence, that we want freedom. We want to secede from India. And there are people who say that in Azad Kashmir also they say they are fighting against Pakistan. They don't want to be with Pakistan. They want to join the state and they want it to be a separate country. So we cannot like imagine, or we cannot guess that what are the chances. So it only depends upon that how much serious people who are involved in this conflict are, whether it's India, whether it's Pakistan, or whether it's the local leaders. So how much serious they are in solving this conflict or fighting for that conflict. So it depends on that, and it depends on the people's resistance.
One proposal or one way of addressing this issue, which is coming from different quarters, is that make this division line as permanent, but at the same time free for people to go across it. And people who are state subjects, they can move freely. But there won't be any change in this, and there should be more trade, and there should be more exchange of people, and more autonomy on that, the people on that side, and more autonomy to the people on this side, and make this as a kind of solution to this issue. What do you think the people in the valley generally in your perception, how they will react to this, or what are their views on this?
I don't think. I think there will be some people who will accept that as a solution, which I think is like the autonomy within the region, and it's like the greater autonomy and all. There are some people who will accept that as a solution, but still there will be a section of the people, and which will be, I think, in my ways, will be the majority of the section who will say no, this is not the solution. We have to fight. We have to be an independent place. So it depends on the people. So there will be a section of people who will accept that as a solution, but still there will be resistance against India.
Are there any possibilities from your analysis that Hurriyat, Gilani Saab ki and of Mirwas and Yasin Malik, JKLF or Shabir Shah, these political leaders will participate in elections ever?
Well, there were some, I cannot say rumors, there were reports that you may have seen in the WikiLeaks reports also, that how it was mentioned in those cables that the Hurriyat M wanted to fight elections in 2008, but when the things turned differently, when that mass protests happened, they changed their mind. So I think you only fight elections and you only give up. You can fight elections with a country against who you are fighting only when you have some compromise. You can negotiate only when you have a compromise. So that negotiation happens only with a person who will be kind of a mild, or who will not resist in such a harder way. Will resist mildly, and then there are chances that you can go to that person and tell him or her that, okay, you join us with this thing and with this thing, you will decide, you will sit on a negotiating table and you will decide. So in 2008 also there were these talks and debates and reports that the Hurriyat M will fight elections, or the Hurriyat M, some people from Hurriyat M will fight elections. In 2002 also there were these reports that in 2002 there were proxy candidates. So same thing is right now, debates and all that, and talks in the different corners of the intellectual or these wherever it is political corners, that the Hurriyat M or some people from these leadership may fight elections. But their position on ground and in public, the position in public and in media has been that they are not fighting elections. So we have to take that, because they are giving statement about it that they are not joining electoral politics. Yeah.
These laws, like, this Prevention Act, and there are other laws, which
AFSP.
AFSP, which, it appears that the whole of population is against that, including the mainstream parties.
Yeah.
Like PDP and National Conference and Communist Party, and all they are against that. But why there is no kind of common struggle against that, get rid of that, and also some civil movement to push army out of the civilian areas? I mean,
civil movement by whom you are talking? Mainstream.
By including the mainstream parties, that at least they agree on that.
Yeah, the mainstream parties are against AFSP, or for that matter Public Safety Act. Like they have been saying, the Chief Minister has been saying that I am talking to Delhi, I will repeal AFSP. But it seems for us that Delhi doesn't accept it. Delhi maybe tells him that no, we are not accepting this. Then the army generals and all those, they give statements that we need this law in Kashmir. It's a dispute. It's a land where there are militants. We have to fight. So we need these laws. So I can say that mainstream politicians or the government has failed to repeal the laws. And if you will talk about the other leadership or the people, why there are no civil movements, there are movements, but the situation in Kashmir is like that. You cannot gather, you cannot sit and you cannot protest.
What I mean is that at the moment there is animosity between mainstream parties and the pro-freedom parties. But at the same time, the mainstream parties also, they are not pro-freedom, but they are pro-autonomy and pro-self-rule.
Yeah, soft separatism.
So they're not, for the merger of state with India, and also they are against these rules. So why can't there be alliance between all these forces, at least for these things. So it does not,
Yeah, there can
and
be.
that can make people's life bit easier.
There can be. So you have to see that in all these years things have changed to that level where the mainstream parties, as you see them, as they also reach to the same level. So it's kind of soft separatism, or they are also separatists but in a different way. But at the end they are in the electoral politics and they are with the government, they are with the central government, they are with India. So there, we don't know in public the separatists, the pro-freedom groups and the mainstream groups, they are different. They are not with each other. But we don't know whether maybe the kind of alliance you are talking or the kind of debates you are saying, maybe they have that, maybe they have those kind of interactions with each other and they discuss about it. But at the end it also depends on, in Delhi, it also depends with the central government, because central government has to repeal the act. So the central government doesn't do anything about it. So you cannot, even if you have an alliance or if you have a chief minister, when the chief minister can't repeal, then what can an alliance do? It will not work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Fahad.
Thank you.
Well, as you heard Fahad in detail, that life in Kashmir Valley is not normal and usual life. There are 600,000 army personnel in the valley, and life for children, life for general people is a life like a life in prison. And this very large prison, which used to be known as paradise on earth, and which used to be known as for his Kashmiriyat and the coexistence, is now going through very, very deep and serious changes. And one of the major change that is emerging, that there is a growing, even growing sentiment that we are not going to stay with India. This is despite 100,000 people got killed and continues crackdowns and thousands of people in prisons. And many of those who are in prisons actually in prison even after they are proved innocent. And the laws which immunize the Indian army there and the Indian political suppression, despite all that, the people's determination that we are going to win our freedom is getting stronger. And as Fahad said, there are incidents where young people are reverting back to the gun and militancy. And of course, this is not going to help to create a peaceful and democratic society, a peaceful and democratic political space, which actually, if we go back in 1987, the reason or the main cause of people going across the line and getting back with guns was the squeezing and suppressing of that political space when the elections were openly and massively rigged. So people's faith in democracy was seriously damaged. And the key to restore that faith of people in democracy and building a peaceful society lies with the Indian government, with the Indian political and democratic mechanism, which of course works fine or relatively fine within India, but when it comes to Kashmir, it turns into a military state or a authoritarian state. And that has to be changed, and only the Indian democratic forces can change that.